Alright, so remember oh god, I don't even remember how long ago it was now, but a few months ago now, back last year, when I did a little discussion-y kind of thing about mythical beasts and how I thought it was a very cool, new, interesting idea in a way they took a mechanic and kind of used it in a way it wasn't supposed to be, but to create something new and interesting for the game. Well, this is kind of happening again, and it's actually pretty exciting. Now, this is something that comes out in the, I believe it's called Dark Saviors Pack, which is the one we've had the Vampire XYZ leak for, in addition to Skyfang, is the other archetype that has been revealed from that. So it's kind of like one of those 3 archetype side set kind of things, like Destiny Soldiers and things like that. But today we have some leaks for something tentatively titled the Brandish Maidens. Now, this is tentatively titled because they are fan translations, so nothing is like permanent on those. We don't know if those are the exact names. That's just kind of what they've been translated to by some fans. I'll also have a link to the original article that I'm getting this information from, which is on Yu-Gi-Oh! One of the best websites to keep up with anything that happens for Yu-Gi-Oh! New releases and things. They're generally some of the first people to actually get info out there, and very good about it. So big thanks to them just for being there in general. But we'll go ahead and get into this. So first up, we have Brandish Maiden Ray. Now, she's a Dark Warrior effect monster, level 4, 1500, 1500. Now, it has 2 effects, and each one are hard once per turn. Now, the first one is a quick effect. You contribute this card as cost, special summon 1 Brandish Maiden monster from your extra deck to an extra monster zone. Now, that will come into play once we see some of the extra deck monsters that they have. Now, also, its second effect, well, this card is in your graveyard. If a face-up Brandish Maiden Link monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card or is destroyed by battle, you can special summon this card. Now, one thing there, I really like that design, because it means you can't just go ahead and clear one of your own cards and then go ahead and abuse this effect. It's actually a sort of built-in recovery effect that's limited to just being that, to just being recovery, which I think is a very good design there and limits any possible abuse the card could have. Now, we'll get into some of the Link monsters. So first up is Brandish Maiden Shizuku. Now, one of the most telling things about this is its link marker. Now, if you look, this has a link marker in the top right, which means it does nothing for you, locks you out of summoning any other extra monsters below it, and gives your opponent a zone. Now, this seems like really bad. This seems terrible. But basically what they're doing is they're taking the still fairly new Link mechanic and doing something different with it. Because of how generic it is, how you can turn almost any monster into a card, they're using Link ones to kind of work that into like kind of the ethos of this archetype. Because as you can tell by the art, how it's kind of Ray in an actual mech there, you can see that this is kind of like a mecha archetype, basically. So, you know, things like Gundam, Girl on the God, just things of that nature. Obviously, we only have one, like, female revealed so far, so it's kind of like an anime girl mecha archetype, but if you ask me, there's nothing wrong with that. So basically, they're actually taking it and they're doing something very cool and interesting with it, where they're using the Link mechanic in a way it wasn't supposed to be used. And as you can see, it's also a very limiting way to use it, in the same way that mythical beasts were pendulums that didn't pendulum summon. This is essentially a Link deck that doesn't Link summon, at least not in the traditional sense. So let's go ahead and get into the effect here. Now, it requires, the monsters are all 1500 that we've seen so far. This one is a Water Machine Link effect, Link 1, 1500, and top right arrow. One Brandish Maiden, it requires 1 Brandish Maiden monster. I'm gonna have a terrible time saying that name. Brandish Maiden, okay. Except a water monster. You can only special summon it once per turn. Once per turn, great clause to have on any single card ever. Do that more, Konami, please. Monsters your opponent controls lose 1 monsters your opponent controls lose 1000 attack and defense for each spell card in your graveyard, and once per turn during the end phase, if this card was special summoned during this turn, you can add one brandish spell card from your deck to your hand that does not share a name with a card in your graveyard. Now, that will become more relevant as we get into some of the effects of the actual spell cards. Now, so far this archetype actually consists of only a 1 main deck monster, 2 extra deck monsters, and all spell cards, which is very interesting, and we'll see kind of how that plays into the design in a bit here. So this one obviously doesn't do much, reduces the attack and defense of your opponent's monsters. If it's only 1500, so as you can see, that's not a very strong effect overall. Now we'll go ahead and get into the second one here. Now this is Brandish Maiden Kagari. It is a Fire Machine Link effect, Link 1, except this one is 1500 and top left. Now this requires one Brandish Maiden monster except a Fire monster. It also has the same once per turn restriction, and if this card is special summoned, you can target one brandish spell in your graveyard, add it to your hand. So this one's some instant recursion. So this one kind of appears like it'll be the secondary one, and the other one will be the starter, even though it doesn't really have a starter effect and it's during the end phase. Obviously, you wouldn't want to summon this turn 1 without, some spells in your grave. And this has the contrary effect where it gains 1000 attack for each spell in your graveyard instead of reducing your opponent's monsters by, or 100 attack, not 1000 attack. That'd be fucking insane. This one is obviously the contrary to the other one. So again, they're not very strong effects. So far, it's not anything overwhelming, but again, they're very interesting. It's a very interesting and cool design. So now let's go ahead and get into the spells, and we'll see why the whole adding spells back and adding spells and getting attack for spells is relevant, because we have, I believe, 8. Let me do a double check here. There are actually 9 spells for this archetype already, which is more than some already established archetypes can have. So first up, we have Brandish Skill Afterburner. This is a normal spell, and its effect is if there is no monster in your main monster zone, target one face-up monster on the field as cost, destroy it, and then if there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can destroy one spell or trap card on the field. So kind of just based on this first effect and going through it and kind of what this implies. So the first implication is that you're not going to have any monsters in your main monster zone. You're kind of going to want to have your one monster that you kind of tag in and out between the different mechs. As we saw, she adds herself back if one's destroyed. So if one of those leaves the field, you'll go ahead, summon her back. She has the quick effect, you can go ahead and tag her out into another one. So it's kind of like there's actually a pilot switch between different mechs, which again is very cool. So this also furthers that implication that you're kind of just going to be running on one monster at all times, which I actually do really like as a concept. So then it obviously has the target monster on the field destroy it, and then if there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can destroy one spell trap card on the field. Now, the other implication that this card has is that you're going to be using most of the power in your deck is going to be through spell and trap, or through spell cards, and not through your actual monsters. And the reason that it kind of seems that way is because it has the if there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, and the only way you'd be able to activate that is if you're using a lot of spells. Now obviously it doesn't limit it to just archetype specific spells, but basically kind of the feeling that I'm getting just from reading some of the early cards is that this is going to be a deck that has supplementary power in the form of spells rather than full-on power in the form of monsters. But now we'll go ahead and get into its counterpart here, which I believe is, there it is. It is Brandish Skill Jamming Wave. This is a normal spell, and it does basically the opposite thing. If there is no monster in your main monster zone, target one spell trap card on the field as targeting being a cost there. Destroy it, then if there are 3 more spells in your graveyard, you can destroy one monster on the field. So again, obviously this gives you, in the most ideal sense, 2 monster pops and 2 spell and trap pops a turn, which is nothing to laugh at, and it is something that is actually pretty strong. So again, just kind of furthering the idea that the power of this deck is going to be more through spells than through the monsters. Now we have a lot of spells to get through, so I'll try to speed this up a little bit. We have Brandish Start Up Engage, which is another normal spell. If there is no monster in your main monster zone, add 1 Brandish card from your deck to your hand, except this card. Then, if there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can draw 1 card. So again, it has the bonus effect with 3 or more spells in the grave, and is a searcher for the archetype. Obviously, very insane. An obvious thought would be if you normal summon, then you can't resolve it, but actually you could just tag it out, that one monster out into an extra monster, and then still be able to resolve this card. It's just a Brandish card, not a monster or just a spell, so this can grab literally anything in the deck, so this bumps everything up to, at the max 6 copies, and if you're using it after a few other cards, you're actually able to draw 1 additional card. Now, seeing that this is actually going to be a starter card because it's a searcher and most searchers just end up being starters, the second effect won't be, usually something you resolve turn 1. Wait, hang on. If there's no... I don't see... Whoa. There's a distinct lack of once per turn on these. Hang on, I need to see if this is just maybe how they have them listed, or if this is just a straight up... No. Oh, no. Oh, no. There's no once per turn on these. Oh, that's insane. You could, resolve the monster pop and then the spell and trap pop. Go ahead and use this to search another one of like either of those. Go ahead and bump your total up to 3 and 3 destruction. And then from there you have Kagari to do even more grabbing back, which could bump this up to like 4 and 4 pops a turn. Oh man, that could actually be pretty insane. Oh man. Okay, so not once per turn. So that makes this a little crazier actually. You could just go ahead and add anything, up to 3 times a turn. That's actually pretty insane. But we'll go ahead and move on from here. We have Brandish Mecha Shark Cannon. Hell yeah. This is a quick play, actually, and if there is no monster in your main monster zone, the same restriction as the other ones, target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard as cost and banish it. If there are 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can special summon it to your field instead of banishing it, but it cannot attack. Now, here's the major problem with that card. Obviously, stealing an opponent's monster from the grave is strong, just banishing it is strong enough, but it actually does bring a monster into your main monster zone, so you won't be able to resolve any of your spell effects from there. So it's kind of a strong snatch steal effect, but it actually does limit the rest of what your deck can do, and it can't attack, so you can't even just use it to go for a quick game there. So the banish from grave is nice, but the special summon to your side of the field is actually more restrictive than you would initially think. From there we have Brandish Mecha Widow Anchor. Now this is another quick play and again has the same restrictions. So we'll just skip past that and go to target 1 effect monster on the field as cost, negate that monster's effects until the end of this turn. Then if you have 3 or more spells, you can take control of that monster until the end phase. Now again, very strong first effect and an even stronger second effect, but more lackluster in this deck. Obviously, just thinking back to Magibolts or even Skyfang, they all have some monster effect negation. Which is all pretty good. Obviously, none of them are destruction ones either. This is another non-destruction effect negation, which is something pretty cool and interesting that they've been doing more of, is instead of destruction negation, just actual negation there. But again, the second part of the effect, you take the monster, but then you actually shut yourself off for the rest of the turn. Could be useful, obviously, if they're going to go for a Link play or something. You could steal a Link 3 they were about to use to go into a Firewall, something like that nature. But again, it does shut you off for the rest of the turn. So I kind of see this as more of a... Obviously, I guess you would be using this on your opponent's turn, so if you can use this to put them in the end phase by snatch stealing, that's actually pretty strong as well. Moving on to another quick play, we have Brandish Mecha Hornet Bit. Now this one I actually really like. If there is no monster in your main monster zone, special summon 1 Brandish Maiden token, Warrior Dark level 1/0/0 in defense position. It cannot be tributed. If there are 3 or more spell cards in your graveyard, that token's attack and defense become 1500. Now, I don't really see the attack and defense boost with 3 spells being relevant. What I see really being relevant about this card is because you can use tokens for link summoning, and the mechs that we have revealed so far don't limit you from using dark ones. You can actually use this as essentially 3 more copies of your kind of main monster there. Obviously not as strong, doesn't have the recursion, it's kind of a one-time use, but it does let you kind of go into your mechs faster if you happen to not see your main monster raise somehow. From there we have their field spell, which is quite interesting. Now this is Brandish Airspace Area 0. And this one is a hard once per turn, which obviously is kind of necessary since it is a field spell there. Now its first effect is you can target one of the card you control, excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, and you can add 1 excavated Brandish card from your to your hand, then shuffle the other cards into the deck. If a Brandish card was excavated, send that target to the graveyard. Now this is kind of going in the theme with what we've seen in field spell recently, especially out of this set, and kind of what some other YouTubers, like I believe CapG made a video on this where he was talking about kind of them making field spells more limited. And I think this fits into that vein. Now obviously it has a very good kind of pod duality, Dark Magical Circle esque effect, if I could speak, but you do have to send another card you control to the graveyard. Now, I believe that actually could be used to trigger the effect of the of Ray up here. So while this card's in your graveyard, leaves the but an opponent's card effect. So it actually cannot trigger the effect of Ray in the graveyard. So this is very limited in the fact that, yeah, you can add a card from your deck to your hand, but it's a little bit more random. There's really no stacking or anything that this deck has. And if you do get a card, you actually have to send a card you control to the graveyard. Now, its second effect is if this card is sent from the field zone to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon one Brandish Maiden monster from your deck. Now, that is very strong. The only problem is, obviously, you can send this card to the grave, but this deck doesn't have any way to send its own cards from the field to the grave, except of course, this card, but it has to target another card you control, so you can't just use it to send itself to the graveyard, which, if you could just do that, this would be another 3 copies of the main monster, Ray, which would obviously be absolutely insane right there. But overall, I just think that the field spell is okay. I guess you could set some spells and traps and still get the effect off there, so I think it could be useful, but I don't think it's the best. Now moving on to the second to last card, we have a continuous spell, which is Brandish Mechanism Multi-Roll. Now once per turn, you can target one other card you control, send that target to the graveyard. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effect in response to your spell card activations until the end of this turn. So this stops them from negating your spells, which is pretty strong, I guess, since most of the work in this deck is going to be done through the effect of these spells and not through the monsters. But this is Yu-Gi-Oh! And monsters are the most important, so this not actually letting your monsters go off, and they can still be striked, they can still be hit by just any removal cards, is a little bit lackluster on this. Plus, this is obviously being a continuous, is susceptible to removal as well. Now, its second effect, once per turn during the end phase, you can set a number of Brandish spell cards, different names from your graveyard to the field, up to the number of Brandish spell cards you activated this turn while this card was face up, but banish them if they leave the field. So that obviously gives you a big push of power, especially with some quick plays, but does have the drawback of you can't recover them after that. But obviously, if you bring back some 3-ofs, it's not that bad having to banish them because you do have more copies in your deck. Overall, I think that this is another strong card, but I feel like it doesn't do enough. Bringing them back during the end phase kind of limits to really quick plays being relevant. Your opponent could obviously use some removal to hit any of the ones that aren't quick plays before you can use them on your turn, then they're banished. Obviously, also only stops negation of spells and not the monsters. And again, even though the monsters don't seem to be the main focus per se, the main power, you still want to be able to have your monsters protected. Moving on to our last card, it is Brandish Mecha Eagle Booster, which is another quick play. Now this is if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, target one face-up monster on the field. Until the end of this turn, that target is unaffected by card effects except its own. Also, if there are 3 more spells in your graveyard, it cannot be destroyed by battle until the end of this turn. So this, I suppose, is kind of the counterpart to, what was the name of the last one here? To the counterpart of multi-roll. Well, this one kind of has the monster protection that one is lacking. Again, this is a strong effect, but it's, I suppose, if you're saving one of your cards, your opponent's using a card, it's kind of like a 1-for-1, but again, you're just kind of using up resources to, it's like My Body is a Shield, which was good for Zoo format, but that, destroyed the monster that was activating the effect, and I just feel like this could just be another card that does a little bit more. Instead of playing a card to try to get out of a tough situation, you could just play cards that stop you from getting into that tough situation in the first place. So this one isn't, I'm not the biggest fan of this one. Also, the 3 or more spells effect, not being able to destroy by battle, isn't that great, all things considered. Now, one more note on the field spell and the continuous spell. Now, they are the only spells that lack the if you have no monsters in your main monster zone clause. And that actually makes them combo more well with the 2 Snatch Steal cards that we have in the form of taking one from grave and taking one from your opponent's field, because the field spell could actually send those cards to the graveyard as a cost to activate its effect. So it's not good if you're going first, but going second, you can actually alleviate the cost of the field spell by actually sending your opponent's monsters to the graveyard, that you've stolen from them, and then you can go ahead and still be able to resolve all your spell effects from there. So that was just a kind of interesting point that I wanted to actually bring up there. And also the same thing with the continuous spell. Once per turn, you can target one of the card you control, send the target to the graveyard. So again, these both kind of alleviate the cost of the not alleviate the cost, but these make your other cards live again if you resolve any of the Snatch Steal-esque cards in this archetype. So actually another bit of design that I really like there, in that these cards combo well together, that you can actually get something out of the powerful effects and kind of work past the restrictions per se. But anyway, this has been one giant long ramble, so I should probably go ahead and try to wrap this one up here. But again, I just want to kind of summarize some of the main points. Again, it seems like it's a very cool and interesting way to do things, taking the link mechanic and just doing something with it that seems like it was never really intended, which, given we're still in kind of almost the infancy of links, just a few sets in, is actually very cool. Obviously, great artwork if you're a fan of anime or anything. If you like mechs or like Gundam, anything like that, this is obviously going to appeal to a lot of people that have nostalgia for those things or just enjoy those things in general. Anime girls and mechs, let's go. I will probably be building this when it comes out, depending on how expensive it is. But anyway, it is, again, just some very cool and interesting design with some cool restrictions, all the cards kind of meshing together in an interesting way. The whole 3+ spells in the grave kind of thing to get extra effects, making the deck gain more power as you go along and kind of push harder and harder. Hey, sex jokes. But yes, overall, very cool, very interesting. I want to see more things like this. This is cool and interesting and innovative design. And I give Konami a lot of shit, but I will give them credit for this and for decks like Mythical Beasts. They are just masterpieces. Anyway, I'll stop rambling and asking for more and just go ahead and call this one here. But again, usual plugs at the end of the episodes, link to my Twitter with some automatic tweets that go out when new videos come out, and also I'm going to try to be putting out some just general thoughts I have about the game. I know yesterday I was putting out just a few random tweets about some thoughts I had on Skyfang and the new cards released there. I'll try to retweet. That's whenever you retweet something with your Nintendo Wii. No. I will try to retweet some more news and things like this, so you guys can also stay up to the date on that if you follow me but don't follow some other people. And then also my Discord as well, where we just kind of chill, hang out, talk about Yu-Gi-Oh!, sometimes do some duels against each other, things like that nature. Also link to my Patreon, where if you appreciate the effort that I put into editing and recording, especially with some of the more editing and recording intensive videos that I have, like the Worst Deck of All Time series, they're very, at least I think, are very well put together and produced Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. They look very professional, and I think that I'm one of the best people at doing that. So if you want to support the effort that I put into those, you can go ahead and support me on Patreon, but no pressure to. Just watching is enough for me, and everyone will always get the same content. Nothing will be gated off or anything like that nature. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.